Hey guys, this is Rays. Today is what is today? It's the 18th of I was gonna call it the 18th of Tuesday, the 18th of February. I think this is tutorial 3. Um, and so let's get into it. So today on the Hud from Scratch tutorial series, we're going to be covering some very key concepts. So I uh, I want to kind of put out this disclaimer now. If you don't watch any other videos in this entire series, you need to watch this one, because this is going to be the base, the fundamental that you build off of. And if you don't understand this concept here, then whenever it comes to implementing your font or moving around different HUD elements, then it's really going to be a challenge for you if you don't understand this. So like this video, I'm going to go ahead and throw out the disclaimer now, another disclaimer that this might be a little bit longer than what we're used to, but I promise these are very important concepts. And in fact, depending on how much I feel like I covered in this video, we might even have to extend this into a part 2. But hopefully not. Hopefully I can be clear, concise, and quick to the point on everything we want to go over today. So today, we're going to be going over 2 files. We're going to be going over one called ClientScheme.res, another one called HudLayout.res. So let's go back to our HUD directory now, and we'll see what we can do with those things. Alright, so again, go to your TF2 custom HUD folder, and the first one you're going to want to go to is the resource. Well, it will be in your resource folder, but the interesting thing here is, because of the way we set up our commit, to where we only send in that one file that we adjusted into the GitHub directory, we're going to need to grab this file from the base HUD directory. So I hope you guys still have that saved somewhere. If you don't, you need to re-extract the base HUD files, and if you need to see a tutorial on how to do that, that's I think covered in part 1 of the tutorial series. So go back to part 1. I also have a separate video for that, so you can check that out. But anyways, we're gonna go back to our base HUD folder where we have our base HUD files. We're gonna go to the resource folder, and we're going to grab this little bad boy right here, ClientScheme.res, and I think the easiest way to move this over is just going to be to drag it. So we're just going to drag it in like this. So now you'll see we've got our hierarchy should be TF2 custom HUD, and then we should have our resource folder, and then the sound folder always appears. I don't really know what that is. Ignore that. That's not a part of that. But then we should have our resource folder, our UI folder with our HUD player health in it. And then this bad boy, the ClientScheme. Oh, actually, this is supposed to be in resource, sorry. And so then once you open your resource folder, you'll have this ClientScheme and then the UI, which will then have your HUD player health. And this is good. This is what we want, because this is going to be the second file we're going to be messing with. So in turn, it should be the second file that we have in our GitHub directory, and in turn our TF2 HUD directory. So there's a lot of talk going around about this ClientScheme file. You know, it's really important. It needs to be in this exact place. If you don't understand it, you don't know what's going on. But what does it do? This thing does a whole manner of things. This is basically like, if I had to put it in an analogy, I would call it like the control panel to like a supercomputer. It controls pretty much everything, and it can make or break your HUD depending on whether or not there's any errors in it. To kind of give a brief overview of what this file is, I think it's easier to give an overview of what the file doesn't do. It doesn't involve positioning of specific HUD elements, but that's pretty much it. You know, you can see here there's all of the colors. All of the colors are given definitions here, and I'll get more into that in the future. And as we scroll down here, you can see this is a really big file. You'll see there's font definitions in here, which is actually the next thing we're going to be covering today. And there's a whole bunch of those. You know, that goes for, you know, really long time. And then you run into borders, which that's not something we're going to touch until way on down the road. But once we get there, and I start mentioning borders, all of the default borders are stored within this file. And then there's a whole bunch of those again. And then as we get to the very bottom, you'll see we have our font installation paths, and that's how we're going to be installing our custom font. We're actually going to do that today, so fun times, right? So the next thing we need to get is, before we do anything in the ClientScheme, is that other file I was talking about, which is our HudLayout.res file. And this one's a little tricky because it's in a different folder that's not quite in our HUD hierarchy yet. So let's go ahead and add that in. You're actually going to want to go to the scripts folder to find this one. Now the scripts folder is also really important to HUD making. Typically when you look at HUDs, you'll see both a resource and a scripts folder within your custom Huds directory, because the resource is the one that has all of the individual HUD files, and the scripts, most people have this, or like pretty much everyone that makes a custom HUD has the scripts folder for anything or for nothing except for the HudLayout.res and a few other things like HUD animations and whatnot. But again, that's something on down the road. We're not quite ready for that. So we're gonna take these a step at a time, or a step at a time. And so first things first, we need this bad boy. So in order to make sure we set this up properly, we'll go to our TF2 custom HUD directory in our TF directory over here, and make sure we add a scripts folder, and make sure it's plural. It needs to be plural. In fact, if you want to, you can just copy paste the folder in and delete all the files that you don't need except for HudLayout.res. But either works. So now we've got our resource and our scripts folder, and we're going to drag this little guy in there. And okay, cool. So now we're good, and we're not going to need any more of the base HUD files in this lesson. So we're going to actually go ahead and close this off. We're not going to need any of the base HUD files anymore. And now let's open up this guy. And so again, this is also a really big file. You can see here just by looking at the little scroll bar on the right hand side. This is a huge file. As you can see, it's got 13,000 lines, which is ridiculous. But what does it do? Okay, so what the HudLayout.res file is important for is it does pretty much everything that ClientScheme doesn't. And what I mean by that is, you know, this does all the colors, the font definitions, the borders, our ClientScheme does. The HudLayout does everything else. It is in control essentially of all of the base positioning of pretty much every single HUD element. As you can see here, HUD player status, HUD weapon ammo, HUD objective status, all of these correspond with respective HUD elements, which we'll get more into once we get into actually editing the individual HUD files themselves. But with this file, you're able to easily and quickly change the positioning of certain HUD elements to kind of get a ballpark estimate of what it'll look like on your HUD, and to kind of help set it up for further editing on down the road. So we're probably not going to be doing too much with the HudLayout.res file this time. We're going to do more in the ClientScheme, but these are both really, really key components in HUD editing, and it's an essential file to have. Both of these are. So we'll cover HUD layout more, I think, next time, depending on how much time I have at the end of this. But for the time being, let's just go ahead and get to the font installation. So again, I did a bad thing. I came unprepared. So let me go ahead and grab the the font files of my custom HUD here, and I'm actually going to install them live with you. You don't need to pay attention to what I'm doing right now. I'm just grabbing those font files because I didn't have them already. So now, you know, I left you guys with the thought of picking out a font, you know, something you might like. Let's actually put it in the game and see, you know, how it looks. All right. So in order to do that, there's a manner of things you can do with your font files, but you need to put them all in generally the same place for means of I guess tidiness. That way you don't get messy with your files. But all you really are going to have to do is you're going to have to take the font files from wherever they are, you know, whether you have them in your downloads folder, maybe on your desktop, but put them in your TF directory. And a lot of people just have them directly in their resource folder on top of everything. You know, I think my HUD's even structured that way. But I find that's kind of a bad practice, and that's kind of messy. So in terms of keeping things tidy, so I teach you guys a good practice, we're actually going to cut these guys and make a folder for them. So the folder for this is going to be called fonts, and it's going to be within our resource. So again, if we want to go over the general HUD hierarchy, or I guess folder tree, we'll have at our very farthest out state, we'll have our HUD folder in the customs directory. Then we'll have our resources in our scripts folder, and our scripts will have only HudLayout.res in it. We're going to do more with that in the future, but this is just kind of a setup for on down the road. And then we'll have our resource folder, which has both our UI with our HUD player health file that we edited in the last tutorial, and our fonts folder with all of our fonts that we plan on using in our HUD, alongside the ClientScheme file itself going along next to those that font and that UI folder. Okay, so we have our fonts in place, and we're ready to implement. Now, before I get too far into the implementation process, there's two different ways that you can install your font. And the first way is a little bit extreme, but it gives your HUD a more thorough feel because it pretty much will in turn replace most of the TF2 fonts with your own particular font. And if you do that, then it'll change not only the in-game HUDs fonts and whatnot, but it'll also give like the menus your own HUDs feel. But the only problem with that is that occasionally the menus won't like your HUD font. Some things might get it cut off, and I mean, even with my HUD, I still have that problem sometimes. So we might cover that on down the road. I might just redirect you guys to another tutorial that I made that shows you how to do that method. But for right now, we're just going to install our font, create a font definition for it, and prove to the world that it works. So without further ado, let's go back to our ClientScheme file. And the first thing you need to do when installing a custom font into your HUD is scroll down to the bottom, because like I said earlier, this is where all of the custom font files are defined. And if you want to quick find this, you can type, you can open up Control F, you can type in custom font files, and if you want to, you can add a few slashes, and you'll jump right to this line, which should be at the very end of the file. But if you just want to make sure you're in the right place, you can search for that. And what we're going to do is we're going to scroll down to the bottom here. And the reason we're going to be doing that is because even though our custom HUD is going to have our own font with it, we don't want to completely get rid of the TF2 stuff, because if we did that, we could potentially be breaking things that you didn't even know could be broken, and it's just not a good idea. So once you find this custom font file directory, you'll see all the TF.ttf font definitions, and so we'll scroll down to the bottom. You can just go ahead and ignore all of this for right now, because it's pretty much irrelevant for what we're doing. And you need to find the line, I believe by default it's 4303 if you haven't done anything to your ClientScheme. But the line that is directly after this 6, as you can see, all of the font files are numbered as to the way they're installed. So since we're going to be installing our own font, we're just going to go ahead and follow that practice, and we'll add a 7. And this is when we're starting to get into some major syntax stuff here. So if you've never done any type of editing or coding in the past, pretty much every time you open up a new section of code, you have to start the section with an opening curly brace, which is that little, I guess, alligator mouth looking to the right, and then end it with a closing one. And you'll see here that we've successfully created a circuit, because whenever I highlight one, it highlights both of them. And in order to make this fast, we're just going to copy the the formatting of one of these other files here. And pretty much what it's saying is, or what we're doing, I guess, essentially is we're giving our font actually a place in this world to exist, because we're going to be specifying the directory that it's in, like its location within our computer, the directory that it's in, and the name that it has. And this is really important. In fact, a lot of like HUD edits break right here, because people are like, oh, the font's not working right, and that's because they mistyped the location or they mistyped the font name. And so this is a very, very crucial step. You need to pay very close attention when you're doing this. And but since these are not our fonts, we'll go ahead and get rid of these, and let's get into it. So the way that these font paths work here is, as you can see, these are all defined within our resource directory, and because of that, we're going to also follow that same format. And just to prove that this is actually something that's true, like what we're doing isn't just jargon that we're like making up to the world, as you can see, we actually have our font files within the resource folder. So we're not making this up. This isn't just coming out of thin air. We're actually following the guidelines that were given to us by the ClientScheme file itself. So we'll have, within our resource folder, we made that new folder called fonts, right? So we'll go ahead and type the word fonts with a slash to signify where our font file is within a folder, within that folder, and then we'll type the name of it. So I have 3 fonts here. So we're going to actually, let me go ahead and install all of these. But again, this is very important, because you need to make sure that you have the exact spelling, capitalization, punctuation, everything, like right down to the dot for all of your fonts that you install. Otherwise, you will run into problems and things will not work. Okay, so you'll see here that I left the name path empty on all 3 of these elements. Oh, I actually need to change the name of all of this, silly me. And again, I made 3 entries within the ClientScheme.res directory because I have 3 fonts that I'm installing, but of course you'll scale yours to the number you have. You know, if you're just working with 1 font, then you'll just need to make 1 definition and so on and so forth. But you'll see that on all of these, I left the name field blank. There's nothing in between these quotes, and that is because you can't just use the name on the font file itself. A lot of people think, oh, okay, well, it's asking for the name of the font, right? Well, it's right here, Byko_black, and they'll type, oh, okay, Byko_black, that'll work, right? No, that is not correct. While that might actually be the name of it, you cannot be for sure, because within a font file, they have kind of a thing called a signature, and within that signature, they're able to give their font in a quote-unquote official name that it goes by within your computer's, I guess, operating system. So it might not be known as Byko_black. We need to find the exact name. So in order to do that, you have to go to your font file, and I'm gonna have to do this for all 3 fonts. But this is gonna be kind of the you know, step-by-step way of showing you. You'll right-click your font file. You'll go to Properties, and then here, depending on what version of Windows you're on, I know on Windows 7 it's the same as Windows 8. There'll be 3 tabs. There'll be a General, and then there'll be a Security, and there'll be a Details. You're gonna want to click on this Details folder. And you'll see here, there's something called a title. And the title is what we're going to go by, because the title is essentially the same thing as the name. It is the official name that was signed onto the font file itself. And so that is how the font is known within, like, your computer. So this is what we're going to use. And you'll see here that they use a hyphen. It might be kind of hard to see on some of your computers, but they use a hyphen here instead of an underscore. So I'm going to have to change that Byko_black to a Byko-black, and now we will have successfully installed the font within the proper directory with the proper name. So let me go ahead and do this for the other 2 really quick. I assume it probably follows a similar practice. I clicked on the wrong thing there. Yeah, and it does, and then we'll double check regular. Oh, see, this one's just called Byko. See, that's why you gotta check. It'll definitely throw you off if you do not check, and then your HUD will break before we even start it, and you'll start crying and be like, oh no, why is it not working? Well, that's why. You gotta make sure you double check those names. And this is Byko bold. And sweet. Okay, so once you do that, save. Again, I saved here, so my little red disc turned blue. But if you start up the game at this point, you'll notice that there's literally like nothing different than what you did a second ago. Everything will be exactly the same. You'll still be running stock TF2. You'll be like, hey man, this guy's ripping me off. Well, that's because you have not created a font definition for it just yet. And we're gonna go ahead and do that now. So as far as font definitions go, I've never really experimented with the positioning. I assume you can probably put it anywhere in the ClientScheme directory, but I'm just gonna show you guys where I've had the most success installing my custom fonts, font definitions. So my fonts within my HUD, your Rays HUD, are installed in the econ font section. So again, like you did with the custom font, you can type econ space font and then a few slashes when you hit Control F. And oh, I must have misspelled something here. Let me see if I can find this. See, everyone has these little bugs that they run into from time to time. There we go, econ fonts. I forgot the S, I guess. Yeah, econ fonts, and then a few slashes, and you'll reach a section of the HudLayout.res that looks like this, and it won't look like anything special to you. But what you're looking at right here is you're looking at essentially every single installation or every single instance of every single font within the default custom HUD of TF2. And if we were installing this the other way, there would be a way to replace all of these fonts with your own font. So basically all of the TF2 fonts are replaced with your own. But again, that's a story for another day. We just want to make our own font and make sure it works. So we're going to scroll to the bottom of the econ fonts, which is right here. And I guess I kind of lied. There's not actually too many econ fonts, and that's why I like it. You can kind of rename it the custom font section if you want. All the other fonts are, as you can see, up here. But it's all the same practice, so... anyways, we found our econ font section, and if you want to go ahead and let the world know that these are where you're installing your fonts, you can actually do something called a comment, where you put 2 slashes, or more if you want, I guess, and then you can type a message that tells the world these are your fonts. You can be like, okay, these, oh, I won't use caps, that's rude. These are the fonts I'm using in my custom HUD. And pretty much everything below this line will still be like active in the code, but because you put those slashes, it's considered commented out and it won't break the game or anything. And I'm lazy, so we're gonna go ahead and copy this. This is actually a bad practice. You don't ever want to copy paste things. You don't want to commit the sin of copy paste. But we'll go ahead and copy paste our little friend above us here, the controller hint text. But of course, that's not the name we're going to be using. But this is where you kind of get a bit of freedom. You can kind of change things how you want. And before I move on, I want to make sure that every font definition has to be within this bracket. There's things called nesting in coding, like where you nest code within another code. And if you do not nest your font definitions within this really big bracket, you'll see the dots go forever, where all of the font definitions are, then your font will not install properly. So before you even start copy pasting anything, make sure you are within this huge thing, and then you can make your first font installation. So you want to, or however we want to call it. And I copy pasted. I wouldn't recommend it, but you know, I'm not gonna stop you as long as you are very careful about it, because the only problem with copy paste is it's really easy to make mistakes, like it's super easy. So just be very careful. But like I said, you have a little bit of freedom here. So first things first, we don't need the range. It's not important for what we're doing. We don't need additive. It's not important for what we're doing. But we're gonna leave everything else here. We're gonna leave everything else, and we're gonna be changing some of these things pretty quick here. So the first thing you're allowed to do is you're allowed to change this thing here. And what you change it to is up to you, but it's going to be the name that your font is known as for that particular instance of a font definition installation. And what I mean by that is, once you start editing other files and it asks for a font name to use, this is going to be the name you're going to be typing if you want a particular font. And I'm gonna make a few instances to kind of show you guys if that's confusing, like what I'm saying, to kind of show you what I'm talking about. You know, a little proof by example. So again, our font, or the font I'm using, is called Bico. So we're gonna actually create the we're gonna name it Bico. So we're gonna call it Bico, and since there's multiple versions of Bico, I have 3 different versions. We're gonna call it Bico Regular, and we want it to be a size, I guess. Be a good size 12, I guess. And then we'll hit Control S again to save. And cool, we've created our first font definition, right? So we've copy pasted this. We have our own unique attributes from every other font definition already in here. We've given it a name, but what's this? We haven't changed the font itself yet. Now this is why getting this name down here is really important. Because if you don't get the name correct down here, then you're going to put the name wrong everywhere else, and things will break, and it's not pretty. So you'll see that the name field here, or the word name here, matches the name field here, and it would only make sense, right, that the name that we put down at the bottom of the file matches the name up at the top. And what this is saying here is that it's saying, okay, so you want to use the Bico regular font, right? The Bico regular.otf font called Bico. Well, okay, so whenever we're looking at our font definitions, then it's going to look for what font file do you want me to use, and because you specified the name Bico here and it matches the one at the bottom, the code will realize, oh, okay, you want to connect that font file with that name to this particular font definition, which is good. That's what we want. That means you're doing it correctly, and then this is where the guess and check kind of gets to come in. So the weight field basically determines the bold value, and what that means is if you want to make your font thicker, you can adjust this bold value to something higher, and it will appear more thick. But again, because I got these individual fonts for thick things and light things alike, then we're not actually going to use that as much in this installation, but or in this tutorial, but this is something you can play around with the weight field. I'm not going to go too much into detail on that though. So we're actually going to get rid of that, because if you don't have a weight field there, then it'll just use the default, which I think is 500 anyways, so it's kind of self-defeating, but there's no sense in having code there that we're not going to use because that only allows the chance of things to get messed up greater. Alright, so now we have this font definition, right? We've given it a name, it's connected to our font file, and what's this tall value here, right? This is essentially, if you opened up Microsoft Word, you know how you can pick a font size up at the top? That's what this is right here. You can pick literally any number. Well, not any number. I think it caps out somewhere around 64, but I don't think you need like a size 72 font in the middle of your screen anyways. But you can pick any number from like, I guess 1 all the way up to like 64. And it might go higher. I don't know. I haven't experimented with it in a while. That you want, and it will correspond with that particular, I guess, font name that you give it. And just for it's a good practice to put the name of the font size, or I guess put the font size in the name of your font installation, and then just make a lot of different versions of that. So like, for example, Byco regular 12 here has a tall value of 12, but let's say we want to have a different instance of that. So let's say what would be a good one, 16. And so we'll make a new font installation here, and then we'll change our tall value to 16. And so now the only difference between these two things is the size of the font. And it's generally a good idea when you're doing guess and check on your HUD elements to do a lot of different, I guess, sizes, like make a lot of presets. That way you can easily switch. Because one thing I didn't tell you guys about the ClientScheme is that every single edit that you make to ClientScheme, unlike the HUD player health that you saw in tutorial 1, requires a restart of the game to take effect. So you can't make a font installation and then be like, oh, okay, I'm going to reload my HUD, and then have it magically work. It does take a restart, so you want to try to do as many possible edits as you can efficiently within this file before you actually go and mess with things in the game. Just because if you don't, you're going to spend a lot of time restarting. And believe me, from a guy who does not have the game on an SSD, it can take quite a bit of time. So while I've been talking to you guys and explaining that to you, I've been creating a few font definitions. And oh, I almost made a mistake there. And I think for what we're doing, then we only need one more for right now. That should be fine. But again, I feel like I wasn't entirely clear. This is a really complicated concept, so if you guys are confused, leave a comment at the bottom of the video, and I would be more than willing to make another tutorial just basing on font installation and going over how to do things with that, and walking you through things. It's just, this is such a broad and hard to grasp, like, complex concept that it definitely takes a lot of time to explain. But anyways, we've got our edits done here. So let's actually put our font in the game and see what it looks like. So we're going to go ahead and launch TF2 now. And initially, now that we've created our font definitions, like, nothing will be different. Like just like before, even though we've created font definitions, we have not applied them to anything within the game files. So as a result of that, the game is still going to look like it's the default. Like, nothing will be different. But that's why we made a lot of different font definitions, because that way when we actually get into the editing of our font files, or not our font files, our HUD files, we won't have to continually add new things to ClientScheme, you know. We'll already have a bunch of stuff preset and ready to go. But I mean, no one gets this right on their first try. So if your game's broken, or you get the wrong font size or whatever, like, it's okay. I say, okay, well, we're gonna do like 1 million of these so we can cut down on, you know, the font, or the restart time and be more efficient. But like, it really is hard. Like, trust me, this is a very difficult concept. So don't feel disheartened or upset if your font installation does not work on the first try. I'm going to encourage you to watch this video again. Maybe slow it down, pause, and follow like a step-by-step process to see exactly what it is I'm doing, and hopefully you can get your issue resolved. Okay, so to test our font, you know, what better way to do it than to test it on that health thing we messed with the other day, right? So that number 125 within the health cross looks really, really bland. You know, that's not fun. We want to make it our own. So let's go ahead and give it a font change. And as you guys will remember, the file that controls HUD player health, or sorry, I guess the file that controls player health is called HUD player health within our resource UI folder. So we'll open this guy back up, And again, we're going to explain more of this later, but for now, let's just scroll down to the thing called player status health value. And that corresponds with that little number in the center of the cross. What you want to look for is, you want to look for the thing called font, obviously, right? We've been talking about fonts this whole video. It would be crazy if I told you to look for something else. And you'll see this name here, HUD class health. And now that you see this, you can actually make the connection to what that font is, right? Because you know the font name HUD class health, you can actually copy that, Control C. And if I go to ClientScheme and I paste in this name, you'll see right here, there's a font definition called HUD class health, and it has a name that corresponds with the default TF2 font, and you'll see it has a height of 16, and it's got a weight of 500, and it's got all this stuff. But now, like, you should make the connection. Oh, okay, well that font name isn't just some random name that TF2 put there. It corresponds directly with the font definition within our ClientScheme.res file. But since they used a size 16, let's actually go ahead and use our size 16. So just to double check the name, I'm going to search for my Bico font, and you'll see we have a Bico regular 16 here. So all you have to do once you're at this point is you just have to copy paste this name or type it. I mean, it doesn't matter. I'm going to copy paste it to make sure I don't mess up, and replace it right here. Control V, hit Control S to save, and then assuming I did my font installation correctly and I did all my final editing correctly, upon doing a HUD reload scheme, that font, the HUD player health font, should be replaced with our new font. So let's do let's keep our fingers crossed here. And there you go, guys. See, that 125 now looks distinctly like anything that you probably haven't seen before, just because we've taken the default TF2 font and replaced it with our own new font. And again, from here, you can really do a lot of experimentation. I did make a lot of font definitions, so like, let's assume we wanted to make it Bico regular 24, then we could just quickly come over here to one of our other font definitions, and then do Control S and save it. And then again, do another HUD reload scheme, and you'll see now the font numbers are bigger because it got replaced from the size 16 with this new size 24. Anyways, guys, I'm sorry the video length is way longer than you guys are probably used to, but this is a very, very important concept to understand. So again, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to leave it in the comments. I'm always looking for ways to improve these videos and to help you guys out further. So I do appreciate the support, though. It's been awesome to get so much positive feedback from you guys, and I hope you guys are learning a lot. Anyways, until next time, I'll see you guys later.